I had really high hopes for Smile. The trailer for this looked brilliant. It looked exactly like my kind of film. And I'm so pleased to say that having now seen it, I really adored it. It's a beautiful film. Maybe the first 10 minutes or so I thought were a bit slow, but once it got going, which happened quite quickly, it really compelled me and I absolutely loved it. This will be spoiler free. I'm not going to spoil anything because I do thoroughly recommend that you watch it. As long as you have some kind of tolerance for intense horror films and thrillers, it's very gripping and sometimes I wouldn't say squeamish. That's maybe not the right word, but it definitely did make me want to look away a couple of times. It was released this year, 2022. It's an 18 film directed and written by Parker Finn. And it's about this psychologist, Dr. Rose Cotter, who is just talking to one of her patients who claims to see things. And then out of nowhere, she begins to see this apparition or this figment that she claims to see. And the next thing she knows, this patient does something disturbing and horrific. And after that incident, Rose begins to see those things herself, and she begins to what she assumes is hallucinating, and she begins to experience the same things. And she begins to realize that maybe it wasn't just a figment of her patient's imagination, and that there is actually an evil force present. And time is very quickly running out for her. And she has to piece together the different pieces of the puzzle in order to try and work out if there is anything she can do to get away from this, or if her fate is inevitable. I loved it. I thought it was unpredictable. I thought it was very well developed. Maybe a little overly well developed. There is a narrative pertaining to something that happened to Rose in her childhood. And I feel like that aspect of it was included to try and give it more substance. Because there are a lot of horror films that are all style and no substance, and there are too many loose threads that don't connect. But honestly, it didn't need that part of the narrative. I can't say too much about it. I'll just say her mother. It's the story involving her mother, and it feels like that was forced into this to try and give it an alternative explanation. But honestly, I feel like it just added padding that didn't need to be there. It was interesting enough, but it always took me out of the main narrative, and I felt like it spoiled it just a tiny bit. Visually, it is stunning, it is gruesome, it is a little bit gory, and it's very atmospheric. The birthday party scene, I think that was the first time, the birthday party scene was the first time in the film where I genuinely felt sick, and the atmosphere made me feel nauseous. And I loved it, and it was brilliantly done. And from that point onwards, it just propelled. Everything moved forward at such a rapid pace, very engaging, not difficult to keep up with it, but it still had a lot going on. That it never felt dull at all. I absolutely adored it. I'd love a sequel. If a sequel is possible, that's something that I would love to see. It's rare that a horror film will live up to the hype of the trailer, but I have to say it truly did. I loved pretty much every second of Smile. Fantastically acted. Rose is played by Sosie Bacon, who I thought did a fantastic job with this really compelling character. Really enjoyed her. I thought she was a great protagonist. Very well written from start to finish. I was really emotionally invested in her journey, and the mental health aspect I think they could have leaned on a little bit more. Not her mental health, but just those of the patients. It does raise some questions about certain language that some people use who are not within the mental health profession. So it's very thought-provoking, but ultimately it is thrilling. It is fabulous visually. It is gorgeous. I don't know if it's my favourite film I've seen this year, but it could be a contender. I did absolutely love Smile.